So we just have a few less people joining, and then we'll get started.
Ready, Jenna? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first Climate Action Public Engagement Feedback session. I thank you in advance for your patience with this virtual format. Obviously, in different times, we would have desired to share this time with you in person, but we hope, nevertheless, to make it worthwhile online. My name is Councillor Nathan Townend, and it is my pleasure to be able to introduce today's proceedings. So on behalf of our CAO, Stephen Silver, and all the staff at Loyalist, as well as your council, Mayor Brzee, Deputy Mayor Hagedorn, Councillors Parks, Porter, Gordon, Buderick, and myself, welcome and thank you most sincerely for taking the time out of your day to be with us. Before going further, I want to introduce the people who have made these sessions possible and from whom you will be hearing momentarily. In our Township Climate Action Plan Working Group, we have Rami Mezarani, who is our project coordinator here at Loyalist. Rami is a graduate of Queen's with a Master's of Applied Science in Environmental Engineering. And to date, Rami has spearheaded a number of initiatives at the Township which loom large in our corporate efforts to create a more sustainable and resilient operation. Alongside is Jenna Campbell, our engineering manager. Jenna is a recent graduate of Western University with a Master's of Public Administration, and she brings to this project a wealth of knowledge and experience in her field. Jenna is an active member of several professional associations, and like Rami, has been an invaluable part as an internal lead in setting Loyalist's horizons for climate and environmental leadership. Next, we have Daniel Hendry, who is our Climate Action Coordinator. Daniel has a Master's in Strategic Leadership towards Sustainability from Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden. And Dan brings to the project respected experience from his being active in various projects related to sustainability, notably within our community. And lastly, but certainly by no means least, we have Claire Ellison, who is currently working towards her Bachelor's of Applied Science in Civil Engineering at Queen's. Claire started working for the township in May of this year and has been the administrative engine of this particular project. As you will note from these persons' involvement, Loyalist can boast a highly skilled, educated, and motivated staff with relevant expertise to make our environmental and climate ambitions a reality here in Loyalist Township. And we're extremely fortunate to have them. But we here at Loyalist Township cannot do what needs to be done alone. It is, of course, important for the township to provide tangible, practical leadership in moving Loyalists toward a low carbon and sustainable future. That's why your council has set ambitious reductions targets, and why council has made climate action a key and comprehensive part of our strategic plan. However, climate change affects us all, and so it is going to require us all to do our part. And that's where you come in. Today is about engaging you, the citizens of Loyalist. No doubt many of you have signed in today because climate action is important to you, because you have experienced and are concerned by its effects, not least of all since the early spring of this year. For indeed, increased frequency of pandemics like COVID-19 are themselves a product of a changing climate. None of you will be in any doubt about the pressing and existential need for change in the way we live as humans on this beautiful but finite and fragile planet. Thus, what we hope to achieve today is to gain insight and perspective from your response to this presentation, but also your imagination. Indeed, not just passion and willpower, but creativity, innovation, thinking outside the box. These are all essential ingredients for climate action as well. This is why we're taking a comprehensive approach in Loyalist. It isn't just about carbon reduction, it's about what we have termed resilience, putting us on course to thrive in a future we know will be different and we know must be different. So please enjoy the presentation that has been prepared, which will provide more detail, as well as present some preliminary ideas for how to initiate a community-led and driven climate action plan. Following the presentation, we will welcome your questions, your ideas, and input. And we sincerely hope this is the beginning of continued conversation and collaboration as we take Loyalist into a resilient future. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Town, for that lovely introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Rami, and I'll be looking to speak to you a little bit about the project today in coordination with Dan. So going through the agenda for today, we'll spend a bit of time going over the background of what this Climate Action Plan initiative is actually about, talk about the Partners for Climate Protection Program, whose umbrella we fall under, talk about where we are in the project, and then really get into what it is that we're here to talk about today, which was Resilient Loyalist Township Climate Action Plan. So we're going to be talking about a few different initiatives that we could look at implementing within our community, but we really are looking for feedback from everyone listening here today, as well as many people in the community as possible. And then we'll finish off by going over some surveys and feedback and different avenues that are available to you to let us know what you think. So getting right into it, in terms of a quick housekeeping slide. So if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, we will be monitoring our email address, which is climateaction@loyalist.ca. Jenna will also be monitoring the Zoom chat box. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use that avenue. And then finally, we'll also be keeping an eye on our social media pages. So if you have if that's your preferred method of communication, please feel free to throw up any comments or questions there, and we'll be looking at hearing back from you there. So we'll be going through some polls. We are having a few technical difficulties with the poll feature in Zoom. So we will be asking you to use the chat box instead. But generally speaking, when you see the different initiatives that are presented, the rating system that we're looking for is 1 star is you do not support this initiative, 4 stars you think it's really great and you think we should implement it as soon as possible, and then 2 and 3 are in the middle on that sliding scale. So a bit of background on this project. So when did we undertake this climate action plan? So in 2017, Loyalist Township Council enrolled the township in FCM, so the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection Program. And really the purpose of this is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within the municipality, both on a corporate level, but also within the community itself. So when we refer to corporate emissions, we talk about all the operations that are directly controlled by the township. So if we look at the township fleet, so snow plows, for example, or fire trucks, as well as buildings, so energy consumed in township operating facilities or water and wastewater plants, that's what we mean by corporate emissions. And then community emissions is a bit harder to quantify, but it is within the community. So average household energy usage or transit and transportation, and those elements are what we refer to when we say community greenhouse gas emissions. So really the climate action plan that we're looking to put together is a standalone document, but really it's meant to complement other strategic initiatives that are endorsed by council. So this would be initiatives such as the strategic plan, the official plan, the asset management plan, or the infrastructure master plan, or even the budget process. So climate action, the project isn't specific to climate itself. It does impact the way the township operates as a whole. So in terms of where we are, the Partners for Climate Protection Program operates on a 5 milestone basis. Again, both corporately and for the community, there's 5 individual milestones which revolve around creating a baseline emissions inventory and forecast. So if we were to change nothing based on what we're doing today, where will our emissions be 20, 30 years from now? Milestone 2 is setting an emissions reduction target. 3 is developing a local action plan, and then 4 and 5 is implementing the plan and monitoring how it's going. So on the corporate side of things, we finished our inventory, we have our forecast, and council approved our reduction targets. We are looking at reducing our corporate emissions by 49% by 2031 relative to 2016 levels. And we're currently working on milestone 3, which is actually putting together the plan on how we're going to accomplish those targets. For the community, we have finished our inventory and our forecast. We're just waiting for it to be reviewed by the Partners for Climate Protection program. And milestone 2, setting the emissions reduction target, is what we're working on right now. We want to hear from the community as to what sort of targets we should be setting for ourselves, so that they can be both ambitious but also realistic. So what does everyone want to see the township implement, and what impact will that have on our net emissions? So that's the information that we'll be using to set our reductions targets. So once we have that, we'll put together our local action plan there. So we're really hoping to get this done either by the end of 2020 or in January 2021. And then milestones 4 and 5 will be 2021 onwards, and really continuously for the foreseeable future. So current status, like I said, we've set our corporate emissions reduction target, which is a 49% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions relative to the 2016 baseline by 2031. So we've given ourselves 15 years, or 10 years from now. And then from the community side of things, we are currently working on setting those targets, and we really want to hear back from you. So here's where this plan comes in. What we've done is we've put together a fairly long list of initiatives that have been implemented in other municipalities across Canada with a fairly good level of success. And so we've spent a fair amount of time researching this, and this list is made up of initiatives that we think could be implemented in Loyalist Township. So what we're going to go is we're going to spend some time going through each one line by line and explaining what it is that the initiative is. And then you'll have an opportunity to give us your feedback on what you think. So in terms of overview, so like I said, we'll go through each one by one. There's about 25 of them. We'll spend a bit of time talking about what the initiative is, give it a quick description, present some high-level estimates for the cost of implementation, so either low, moderate, or high, what the greenhouse gas reduction potential of the initiative actually is, same thing, same scale, and then how long it'll actually take to implement. So we did have some Zoom polls lined up, but like I said, we are having a few issues there. So there's a couple of options that you could use to give us your feedback. Is one, you could either go through the Zoom chat. So any comments that you put in there will only be viewed by Jenna, so they are fully anonymous at this point. Or you could fill out a survey later, and we'll send a link, or we'll point you in the right direction for that. So as a quick reminder, we are looking for, on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being you do not support the implementation of this initiative, and 4 being you really do. Please give us your feedback based on that criteria. So getting right into it, we have broken this down into 5 different categories. The first one is community resources. So the first idea, or the first initiative that we are looking at, is implementing a tool library or a repair cafe. So really what this is, it's a rental shop or a community sharing center where patrons or members can check out or borrow tools, equipment, or just how-to instructional materials. So tools that maybe you don't necessarily need to own because you'll use it once or twice a year, if that. This tool library would be a place where these resources could be shared across different members. We could also have the opportunity of bringing in resident experts that could help members on how to fix certain everyday use items, and just provide that knowledge there. So in addition to just reducing the amount of stuff that you need to buy, it just creates that sense of community around fixing things. So let's take a bit of time, if you don't mind. So on a scale of 1 to 4, if you could let Jenna know what you think of this idea, and we'll just give it a few minutes here. So let's give it about 10 more seconds. All right, moving on to the next one. So online resources. So this one would be a bunch of interactive tools focused on climate resiliency and education. So resources will be put up on the township website through the climate action page, and really could include anything from a cost benefit analysis for anyone looking at purchasing an electric vehicle, or a carbon footprint calculator for someone and to determine the carbon footprint of their individual lifestyle, or even a website that would provide suggestions on how to make a home more climate resilient. So the possibilities are endless here. This could be implemented fairly quickly for fairly cheaply, but maybe it won't necessarily have the largest impact on our emissions, but it could contribute to lowering emissions overall. So let's spend a bit of time voting on this. So reminder, 1, you don't like it, 4, you love it. So we'll give it about 10 more seconds again. All right, moving on to the next one. So Climate Action Fund. So under this initiative, the township would set up a fund that would allow either residents or businesses to make donations that would fund local climate action projects. So a common pool of money would be set up where residents or businesses could donate some money either for a tax receipt. And once enough money would be gathered or collected, the funds or the proceeds of the Climate Action Fund could be used to fund greenhouse gas emission or retrofit projects within the community. So any project that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions or increase energy conservation or divert organic waste or just assist with climate change adaptation and mitigation overall could be funded through this project. So it could be implemented reasonably quickly for not a whole lot of cost to the tax base, but it could have a moderate impact to our greenhouse gas emissions as a whole. So if we could take a few seconds to vote on this one. And we'll give it about 10 more seconds. All right, moving on to the next one. So education sessions, again, another one that is fairly quick to implement and fairly cheap to implement, but maybe doesn't have the largest impact on greenhouse gas emission reduction per se, would be education sessions. So the township could organize or could facilitate education sessions on a variety of topics that would provide a platform for like-minded individuals to connect. So this could be anything from home gardening to energy and water conservation or active transportation or other topics that just promote sustainability or resiliency as a whole. So let's go ahead and vote on this one. Take a few more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. So the last one in the community resources category would be youth engagement and education. So it's very similar to what we just talked about on education sessions, but these ones would be mostly geared towards the younger crowd. So again, same thing, quick to implement, wouldn't cost a whole lot with a moderate or a low greenhouse gas reduction potential immediately, but it could have add-on effects over time. So really this initiative would be used to educate the up and coming generation on the effects of climate change and local climate action. We started doing something similar for our virtual camps this year where Claire would go in once a week and talk about climate change to campers. So we'd be building on that. So other ways we could do that would be working with the engineer in residence program with Professional Engineers of Ontario, where an engineer would work with local schools to talk to young people or to talk to students about the topic of science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as climate change, or setting up a virtual township through Minecraft, the online gaming platform, where users could walk around the township in a virtual fashion and interact with each other that way. So there's lots of possibilities here. These are just a few examples, but really the main purpose is to drive youth engagement. So please let us know your thoughts on this one. All right, give it a few more seconds. Excellent. So that's the end of this particular section. So if we could just take a few seconds, Either if you could raise your hand if you have any questions or put them into the Zoom chat box, or feel free to email us. But also, if you don't mind, we wouldn't mind hearing from you on your favorite initiative in this category. So as a reminder, there were tool library, online resources, climate action fund, education session, or youth engagement. So if you could put down your favorite one, the one that really stood out to you or that you really liked, in the chat box, so you can let Jenna know there, please. And we'll give you a few seconds to do that. All right, thanks. So let's move on. So the next category falls under environmental protection. So the first initiative in this one is community garden. So as the name implies, it's organized public spaces where the community can come together to grow food and other plants. Again, this could be on a membership basis or just on a sign-up basis. There's many ways to go about it, and several of these could be set up throughout the community. Again, it might take a little bit more time to implement something like this. It wouldn't cost a whole lot, but just the organization around it might be a little bit tricky, but it's definitely doable. And then the greenhouse gas reduction potential is fairly low, but again, it would lead to more down the road. So scale of 1 to 4, please let us know your thoughts. All right, perfect. So let's move on to the next one. So home energy retrofits or audits. So this one really has the most potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within the community, but it also would take a fair amount of time to set up this program, and it would be a little bit on the pricier side. So the first part of this is energy audit. So it would identify areas for improvement in a home's energy profile. So determine, it would someone would come in and take a look at a home and determine where can energy reductions take place. So would this be by upgrading the windows or upgrading the insulation or putting in solar panels or anything along those lines, and determine what the impact would be. So really the goal here is to identify ways to reduce the energy usage of individual homes, and just provide recommendations to the homeowner. The next step to that would be actually going to do the home energy retrofit. So one of the main barriers to usually starting a project like this for an individual home is the cost associated with it. So under this, the township would facilitate low interest loans to homeowners that would be tied to their property taxes and paid back over time to allow them to undertake these initiatives, which would have a fairly significant and immediate impact on their energy bills. So over time, the loan would be paid back, but the benefits from the upgrade would go well beyond the term of the loan. So if you could let us know your thoughts on this one by putting your score from 1 to 4 in the chat, please. And we'll give it a few more seconds.
No, what else can I do?
Moving on to the next one. So pollinator protection strategy. This one would take a bit of time to implement. It would have a moderate cost and maybe not a huge greenhouse gas reduction potential, but I think we can all agree that pollinators are fairly crucial to to nature as a whole. So it would be, this initiative would be about setting up policies to protect diverse native pollinator communities. So this could be done by creating or enhancing natural pollinator habitats, or designating green spaces, or just educating residents on how they can set up a pollinator-friendly garden, for example. Really, the main goal here would be to create a robust and resilient ecosystem that would promote biodiversity, and this would really provide significant environmental benefits, even though it might not have a huge impact on the greenhouse gas reduction or greenhouse gas emissions right immediately. So please let us know what you think on this one. Excellent. Let's move on. So two more in this category. The second to last one is rural resources and land use initiatives. So moderate implementation timeline, low cost, moderate impact on greenhouse gas emissions reductions. The focus here would be reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving sustainability and conservation of the land. So really, it would be just helping rural residents by educating them on sustainable agricultural practices or pointing them towards the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry's managed forest tax incentive, or just going back to that education session on sustainable land use practices. So it's very similar to what we were talking about earlier on education sessions, but mostly geared towards rural residents. Give this one a few more seconds. All right, and the last one in this category is the rain barrel program. So this one would be helping or giving residents access to rain barrels that would help collect or store rainwater on a property that would be used to water plants or gardens, but also would have the added benefit of reducing stormwater runoff. So, and then the last benefit of this would be reducing individual water usage on properties. So under this program, we just want to make sure that we're to clarify here is that we would work with local organizations that already run programs such as these, as opposed to doing it for them. So all we are trying to do is support these organizations as much as possible. Can the township help coordinate bulk purchases of rain barrels that would reduce the cost to the consumer, while also helping out the organizations that run these programs, such as the Lions clubs or the schools. So if we could give us your thoughts on this one. All right, perfect. So that takes us to the end of the environmental protection section. So again, if you have any questions on this one, please raise your hand or put it in the Zoom chat box or send us an email. But could you please let us know your favorite, if anything really stood out for you in those last 5 initiatives? So please let Jenna know in the chat box. Okay, great. So that takes us to the end of this section. I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who's going to talk to you about initiatives in the local business category.
Thanks so much, Remy. And thanks everyone for watching and being patient through this and listening. Please, any comments, continue coming into either the email or the chat box. And just to reiterate, I have a couple sections to go over here, but one thing importantly, we kind of did a long list of research of things that were happening and maybe could happen here, but that doesn't limit our creativity. So if you're thinking of other things that we might have missed or bigger things or different things, please add them in as well. Or when we have the opportunity to pop up, please add your voice of things that we might have missed that you do think, because this isn't just about this list. This is a good baseline, hopefully, but again, looking for any feedback out there. So going on to the local business section. So one is very pertinent today. I just saw the news that the federal government will be continuing to ban single-use plastics over the next 10 years. And this is a voluntary waste reduction strategy for local businesses, specifically around the consumption of single-use plastics, such as bags and utensils and cups and containers. This initiative would have a low effect on direct greenhouse gases, but not if you think of the big picture. These things are made of petroleum products and they're shipped all around the world. So this would reduce also the amount of waste getting sent to our local landfills. Furthermore, this initiative could help with operating or offset operating costs for businesses that have to a lot of times use private contractors for their waste. So if you don't mind, again, 1 being lower and 4 being more support, if you don't mind giving Jenna a comment and a rating around the waste reduction strategy for local businesses. And maybe a couple more seconds here, we'll move on. The business section has 3 different kind of ideas.
So frustrating.
Okay, so the next here is something specifically called the Green Economy Leader Program. These are hubs that exist all across Ontario, and in fact, I think they're expanding across Canada, in which the Loyalist Township could potentially join one of these hubs that helps support businesses and organizations create a baseline of their greenhouse gases, and then work towards individual plans for organizations to really start making changes to reduce greenhouse gases. When I say greenhouse gases, I just mean looking at your utility bills and creating ways to save money and reduce greenhouse gases this way. This one here has, it could cost a little bit more money, has a more significant effect on greenhouse gases locally, as well as it's more of a moderate timeline. If you could vote on this one, again, 1 being low and 4 being more support, that would be great.
Okay, I'll just close it.
Perfect. Maybe a couple more seconds, again, for your comment into Jenna, if that's okay. And we do apologize with the polls. That kind of happened just before we went live. So hopefully we can figure this out. And yeah, we appreciate your patience on that. The next one here is promoting local foods. So this could be facilitating or supporting production and consumption of local organic foods. Opportunities in this category could be supporting local businesses by the idea of helping encourage CSA, which is a community supported agriculture. This could be done by either providing drop-off locations or places to grow local food. Another idea could be something around local food, like the public health has a good food box, which is a not-for-profit that gets fresh vegetables and fruits out to the community. These are 2 different ideas, again, running with a moderate timeline and lower costs and lower greenhouse gas reductions. But again, going back to the greenhouse gases, low direct, but at the same time, if you think of the amount of greenhouse gases shipping different types of vegetables and fruits all around the world to us, building up that resiliency in that local food system does have a big impact longer term. If you don't mind voting again, in the chat box there, and it's, we'll move on to the next category after this, which will be transportation.
Okay. So I'm making my finger.
So this takes us to the overall feedback slide of this, the local business section. If you are able to vote on the one that you thought resonated the most with you, whether that be the waste reduction strategy, supporting local foods, or green economy hub, which again is that baseline for greenhouse gas reduction for business and organizations. If one of them stood out that you thought that there means a little bit more, or you resonates a bit more with you, if you don't mind putting it in the chat box. Also, feel free to raise your hand, send an email, or ask specific questions if you have this, because I'm here to hopefully answer some of those questions if I can. The next section, sorry, will be coming up will be transportation. So transportation as a whole in Canada, around the world, drives a lot of greenhouse gases. So there's a lot of different strategies that can help reduce some of these greenhouse gases. One would be the idea of active transit. So this includes anything for self-propelled transportation. So usually infrastructure based is walking, running, biking. This could be sidewalks, multi-purpose trails, bike lanes, or paved shoulders. This one has a longer implementation time, but has the opportunity to reduce more greenhouse gases. And this one, again, would require a higher level of investment. So again, with the idea of supporting and building out active transportation opportunities, if you don't mind voting with a 1, 2, 3, or 4 of your support, that would be great. The next, maybe in a couple seconds, we'll move on to the next slide here, which is public electric vehicle charging stations. So this one here, again, as for the timeline and greenhouse reduction possibility, it takes a little bit longer, but it does have the opportunity to drive lower GHGs. What you see here is most electric vehicle owners have to recharge at home. However, as more electric vehicles enter our society, public charging stations can provide a boost for these low emission vehicles, allowing owners to plug in while running errands around town. The addition of public charging stations in Loyalist Township would address the need of this sort of infrastructure, between Napanee and Kingston, contributing to the expansion of electric vehicle network across Canada. If you don't mind voting 1, 2, 3, or 4, with 4 being the most support and 1 being the lowest in the chat box, that would be great. Just a couple more seconds, we'll move on to the next slide around transportation, which is public transit. Public transit in Loyalist Township, this maybe wouldn't be a one size fits all. There's a lot of different options around the idea of rural or smaller transit systems. But transit systems can play an important role of a connected, livable, and sustainable community. It does take time and energy to implement, but if more bodies are on those buses, it can reduce a lot greenhouse gases significantly. Here again, you see a higher cost, but with higher ability to reduce greenhouse gases and a more moderate timeline in the middle there. Again, a 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat box if you don't mind. 4 being high support and 1 being low. Just a couple more seconds and we'll move on to the last strategy around transportation, which is actually a community bike sharing program. Bicycle sharing programs is a service in which bicycles are made available for shared use to individuals on a short-term basis. These have a moderate or a middle kind of greenhouse gas reduction and can be done fairly cheap and time-wise fairly short. These programs are typically run by a third-party vendor and could enhance active transit in Loyalist Township, contributing to a reduction in greenhouse gases. If you don't mind voting on this idea that are popping up around Canada, let me know 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat box. And again, why this matters, we'll add up all these, or not add them up, but make sure we factor in people's thoughts on these ideas to help as we're continuing to write this report. We'll move on to the next slide here, which is actually a general feedback section. So if you had any questions and you wanted to raise your hand and ask or comments, a Zoom chat box, we have people monitoring that, as well as we have people and myself as well monitoring the climate action at Loyalist Township email. But we will move on to the last component that we've put together with strategies, and it'll move on to waste reduction. And there's 5 different strategies here. One being backyard composting. So this is the idea of supporting the use of compost bins in Loyalist Township. So turning organic waste into a valuable resource that can be reused in our land, and keeping in mind that this would take different waste product out of the landfill stream, which would prolong the life of landfills. So this is just an option of supplying or supporting compost bins in Loyalist Township. Low cost, relatively high or relatively moderate greenhouse gas reduction potential can be done and continue to be done pretty quickly. If you don't mind voting, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. I sound fairly repetitive. It's weird talking to a camera, but I really appreciate those that are watching, going through this with us and listening to my voice every time I say 1, 2, 3, and 4. But we'll move on to the next one, and we're almost there until we can do general feedback and gather more input if you'd like. So a couple more here. These are newer, and there's several varieties that exist. But the idea is it's an appliance, and there's again different. This is an emerging technology, but different appliances that you can bring into your home, and they break down organic goods without smell. This is a high potential to reduce organics out of the landfill that would reduce methane essentially once they break down without oxygen. It can be done fairly cheaply and at a pretty quick, depending on the technology. This would be something that maybe looking at a bulk purchasing potentially to see if it's a lower cost for residents. Again, the idea is though keeping composting out of the landfill, and what is produced is soil that you can then be using for plants and on property. Again, a couple more left, but 1, 2, 3, and 4, 4 being the highest, 1 being you do not support or you don't like it, for the home composting unit. And we have a couple more moving on around composting options. I'm going to move to a community compost depot. So this is a centralized composting facility where residents actually bring and drop off their compost-friendly organic waste. Material would be processed on site and turned into compost, which would be made available for users. It's a moderate cost and moderate greenhouse gas reduction capabilities, and moderate kind of timeline you see there. These community depots, again, are centralized. People bring to them. So it's setting up a community compost depot in Loyalist it would take several years to complete, but it does have good potential greenhouse gas reduction potential, depending on uptake of the community. Again, voting 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you don't mind. And we'll move to the second last of the initiatives before we open for general feedback, additional ideas. This is Curbside Organic, so a green bin program. This would involve curbside pickup of organic materials through a green bin. So organic pickup would incorporate into the existing garbage and recycling programs within the township. Due to its user friendliness, curbside organic collection is the most effective method, usually of diverting waste from landfill, with resulting in a higher level of greenhouse gas reductions. However, the infrastructure required to pick up and process green bin waste would also result in the greatest costs for residents out of the potential organic waste options that were presented today. So this one, again, is a higher cost, but with higher potential for reducing greenhouse gases and a moderate timeline to set up properly. So 4 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. And we have one more waste reduction strategy before we open it up. I'd like to take it to one, it's called a clear garbage bag policy. So under this initiative, residents would be required to dispose of their waste in clear garbage bags as a way of encouraging recycling and/or organic waste diversion. Residents would be allowed one privacy bag, and clear bags would be rejected if they contain too many materials. This initiative is a low-cost way of encouraging proper sorting. As you know, the more that goes into the landfill, the quicker the landfills do fill up. And this would be a low-cost initiative that could result in a positive effect on waste-related emissions by increasing the amount of waste being diverted from landfills. So low cost, very easy to implement, with a moderate potential for greenhouse gas reductions. And again, these we have researched across Canada. Different communities are working with this. So this has been existing in some other communities across Canada. If you don't mind voting 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'll move it on to the end of this section, which is the waste reduction feedback. Again, hands, if you're interested, we're keeping on that. If you had any comments or thoughts, any questions in the chat box we can acknowledge, or any emails at climateaction@loyalist.ca. So the session today has gone for about 40 minutes or so. We do really appreciate your involvement. Acting is and participating is really what we appreciate. We've been working on this for a while, and putting this together and gathering feedback via email and surveys and social media and pop-up booths across the township when we were allowed to do that responsibly. This is a time now for overall feedback. My name is Dan Hendry. There's the team behind myself. We've been working, or not behind myself, with myself. I apologize, guys. But just looking for overall feedback. Even this process of engagement, I hope it has worked for you in some way. We were working the best we could. Of course, it'd be a delight to see and meet people in person, as we're all actively working towards, making Loyalist Township, reducing greenhouse gases. So if there's any general or overall feedback, please, again, hands up. You're more welcome to pop on and say something, a Zoom chat. The other thing we could really appreciate and help as we open it up and have any comments or questions we can address as the team is the last slide that'll pop up here, which is you guys were so willing to come today and help us and provide feedback. And hopefully, if you're willing to produce additional feedback, that'd be great. But please consider filling out these surveys or even helping spread them. There are 2 specific surveys that will really help inform decisions about special things. One being the SSO, or Source Separated Organics Survey, which all these can be found on the township's website on the Climate Action page. And the second being the Public Transportation Survey. Those are 2 very specific, more detailed surveys. What you saw today, we've actually surveyed and kind of codified and put into what you see there being the Climate Action Plan Community Initiative Survey. So if you want to build on, if you don't feel your voice was heard, if you go into that, you can put more information into there, and we'll definitely be able to incorporate into what we're doing today. With that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and open it up. If there are any comments, questions, thoughts, please email, Zoom, we're monitoring social media, or pop on, and hopefully we can, as a team, answer and record some of your thoughts for feedback. Thank you so much for coming today.
I have one question, guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Russell.
Awesome. How are you, Dan?
Good. How
One
are
thing
you?
I did notice is a lot of this seems to be surrounding kind of waste reduction, a little bit of energy reduction, but there wasn't too much around reducing water use. One thing I've noticed as a Loyalist resident is my water bill doesn't really seem to be affected very much if I reduce my water use. There seems to be a lot of price just on a base load, no matter how much water we use. It seems to be about, I think, $90 to $100, whether I use any water or not. Would water reduction not impact energy efficiency measures in the wastewater and the pumping stations? So maybe putting more of a price on how much water you're using, making people use a little bit less water versus putting so much price on the kind of the base load of that. I don't know if that makes sense in a way, but it just seems like there was a lot of stuff on the waste reduction and not really too much on water. Thanks.
I can answer that if, yeah.
Sure.
Thanks for the question. Appreciate that very much. It's a good point. Over the past number of years, with the last couple of rate studies, Council has been looking at options with respect to the consumption portion of our water bills versus the fixed portion. And over the last number of years, we've been moving toward having more of the bill impacted by the consumption portion in an effort to try to get people to consume less. You're absolutely right in terms of the impacts that it has on the hydro and that sort of thing that we use for treatment, as well as chemicals and other things and pumping and all of those things. So it's a good point. We've been trying to move that way, to look at the balance between our consumption rate and our fixed rate, and that's good feedback that we can look at how that might be able to be incorporated into the climate action piece as well as into our rate structure.
Yeah, and I think one thing for the community engagement sessions, if you're doing anything around water, Utilities Kingston loves giving out a lot of kind of free swag, like use less water, put this low flow thing on your tap. That might be a good way to get more residents out. So not only are you learning something new, maybe you get a rain barrel, maybe you get some low flow taps. And on top of that, you're reducing the cost for using less water for your house. It's just, I know like people like getting free stuff. So sometimes that might be a good way to get people out there.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion too. Thanks for that.
Great job today, guys.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any thoughts? Okay, well, so again, if you think of anything later on, please feel free to email us at climateaction@loyalist.ca or use social media. But again, we really do want to hear from everybody, and we appreciate those of you who took the time today to listen in on the conversation. So with that, have a wonderful evening, everybody, and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rami,
Okay.
I'm assuming the session this evening is roughly the same.
Yes. We're just trying to cater to. Sorry, are we still live on YouTube, Trevor?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're just trying to accommodate people's schedules based on work. So this one was a bit earlier, and then we'll do another one at 7. That'll be the same format.
Excellent. Great job, by the way. I really like the